Hello, thank you for tuning in to chromebookhelp.info. My name is James, and today I'm going to show you a little bit about editing photos on a Chromebook. Now, this isn't technically Chromebook specific. What I'm going to show you is a program that works on Chrome, OS, Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever. Pretty much any device that has a web browser and a full web browser and Flash. And the app that I'm speaking of is called Pixlr. It's a Photoshop-like app that works inside the browser. So we'll take a look at that. And I'm showing you a picture here. This is Photoshop 7. This is where I started learning Photoshop a long time ago. And you see how this looks, the layout of it. If you remember Photoshop 7, you are going to see a lot of similarities in Pixlr. So you can access Pixlr by just going to Pixlr.com. It's also an app in the Chrome Web Store. All that does, though, is take you to Pixlr.com. If you open the app, I'll show you. Pixlr Editor. See, it just takes me to the app, to the website. So first thing, you can create a brand new image from scratch. If you do that, you can choose some preset sizes or give it your own size. Choose if you want it transparent. And there you go. Now look at this. Does this not look a lot like Photoshop 7? I mean, not everything is in the same exact order over here, but pretty much all the same buttons and options are there. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, you should be all over Pixlr. Now, Photoshop, as it looks today, is much different. I understand that, but if you've been using Photoshop for a while, then you'll recognize a lot of the stuff you see here in Pixlr. So we'll just kind of give you a basic rundown of some of the features here, and I'm going to move this out of the way. So over here, you have your navigator. I don't really use this too often, but it's good for zooming in and zooming out on the image when you need to. Layers is used quite often, of course, and this works just like it does in Photoshop. And then down here you have the history, so you can go back and every time you do anything, you'll notice that there's a new item under history. And let's do something we can actually see here. So let's say you add some text, and maybe you add a shape, a couple shapes. You can go back to the history tool down here and go back one step at a time. Go way back 5 steps ago. This doesn't record a whole lot of steps, though, so be careful. I'm not sure how many steps it will record. Still has new image there. Here we go. Now you see, I can no longer go back to when I added those text layers or when I open the new image. So it doesn't remember a ton of steps. This right here is about all the steps you can go back. So just be careful. Be careful about that. I'm not sure where my history went. Let's bring it back. So, but it's a handy little tool for being able to go back 10 or so steps and change things. So what I'm going to do is delete these layers over here. So, kind of give you a breakdown. Most of the keyboard shortcuts that you use in Photoshop should still work. Control A will select everything, and then you can hit backspace to delete it. Control D to deselect things. Let's see here. Over here, the layer starts out locked, just like in Photoshop, which means if I select an area and delete it, it just goes to a white background. It does not go transparent, and I can't move this layer. So I'm going to use the move tool. You see I got the little circle with a line through it next to the arrow, because this layer is locked. Now if I double click on this lock, it is no longer locked. That means I can move the layer around, and if I delete stuff, it'll go transparent instead of a white background. Select all and delete. So typically the first thing I do when I'm creating a new image is unlock the layer, because chances are I'm going to want to play around with it, but sometimes I don't bother. Another cool thing you can do over here with the layer tool is you can change the opacity of the entire layer by clicking on this. Bring the opacity down so it makes it kind of see-through. That's a cool feature. Let's see here. Just trying to think of the basics. Over here, if you're not familiar with Photoshop, I'll kind of show you what some of these things are. This is pretty much the universal crop symbol. So if you want to kind of zoom in on a particular part of the image, get rid of some of this extra black space here. You can come in here and crop it, and after you select it, you can move it around a little bit to get it just right. Click outside the box, hit yes, and it just cropped our image down. It's pretty universal. It's just a move tool, lets you move the layer. A select tool, you can select a square or a circle. You can give it restrictions. Aspect ratio, so it's always a perfect square. No matter what I do, it just gets bigger, smaller. Put it back to no restriction, and I can make rectangles. I can go all over the place. Same with the circle tool. You can do ovals and stuff. Set it to aspect ratio, and now I can only do perfect circle. This is also a select tool, but it's more of a free range select tool. Instead of a square or circle, I can draw my own shape and it'll select it. And this is a straight line selector. So you start by clicking, and then you click again, and then again, and again, and you can kind of select shapes that way. This is just a select all kind of tool. If I click here, it'll select all the red. Click here, it'll select all the blue or the black. There must be something here I'm not seeing. It has a tolerance level here, so you can choose how tolerant the selector is. And that doesn't really apply to something like this where it's just two colors. But something where an image, like a photo, where the colors are all kind of shaded and blended around, sometimes you'll need to mess with the tolerance of the selector to select more of that red area or less of that red area or whatever you're trying to select. So just keep this tolerance in mind. You may have to play with that to get it to select exactly what you want. Bucket tool here, of course, just fills a solid color. Paintbrush lets me draw around. You have a lot of options with the paintbrush up here. You can do kind of a solid circle or this sort of blurry circle, squares. What's really cool about this tool, you can go up here to more, and there's a whole bunch of cool things you can add. You have categories up here, 5 categories. Let's go to nature and clouds. Clouds is a fun one. Make really realistic looking clouds. Doesn't look like much here, but I'm going to hit add. I'm going to select this cloud, and the diameter is way too big, so I'm going to bring this down. Okay, that's a little small. Maybe we'll make it a little bigger. There we go. So let's delete everything in this image. Let's make the image a little bigger. Let's make it 700. Not sure what I just did. Forgot a 0. That's what I did. Okay. Now I got my brush tool selected. and I can do some clouds. Let's give it a background first. Some kind of bluish background. Throw in some clouds, and there's different types of clouds. You can fill in there, and these are really realistic looking clouds. You can play around with that. So that's a cool feature of the brush tool. Check out all those different options if you're trying to make maybe some more of a realistic type image. There's a lot of different options in here. Under artistic, nature, makeup, shapes, miscellaneous, all sorts of stuff. Then we have an erase tool, the same kind of options as your brush up here. Let's choose the same things for the erase tool as you do the brush. I don't use all these options. Gradient tool is kind of a fun tool you can use. Select your colors up here. So I went from white to black, and then you just draw on the screen, and it'll create a gradient in the direction that you draw. You can do a radial gradient if you want to do something like that. So that's cool. You can add colors here if you want to make it a crazy gradient. Let's make this like red. Let's make this one something crazy. Let's make it blue. So we got from white to red to blue to black. Draw a line. Got this crazy radial gradient. Let's do a linear gradient. And of course it matters how long you draw out the line. So that's a cool tool. Don't use it a whole lot, but I have used it. It's nice for making backgrounds for a website, maybe for maybe the outer edge of the website. Maybe you just want to I'm not sure how to get rid of these. There we go. Just a two kind of color from top to bottom. Yeah, I screwed that up. Oh, there we go. Select it and hit the garbage, and it'll go away. Let's try this. So that can make a nice little background to throw behind a website. Just a smooth transition from white to black or something like that. I do use this tool fairly often. It's a shape tool. I can do a square with sharp corners, rounded corners, circle, or just a line. If I do a shape, I have the option to fill it. And this is the fill color, I believe. Maybe that's the border. Nope. So the color down here will be the border, and this color will be the fill color. So if you choose to fill it, see I have a black border with the red on the inside. I can also change the opacity. So I can do 50. Yeah. And there you go. You can see it's darker down here because it has a darker, blacker background. It's lighter up here. It's because it's 50% opaque. I'm going to delete everything just to give you a better picture of this. Let's give it a white background and do the shape. See, it's kind of pinkish because it's only 50% opaque. Bring it up to 100. It's a solid. It has a white border because this color down here I selected as white. Make it black. There's a black border. So that's kind of a cool tool. You can do rounded corners. Or you can do circles. And you can just draw a good old-fashioned line. Give the line a border size. So you can make a nice big thick line if you want. You can still control the opacity of the line. So I do use that tool fairly often. And really, of all these tools, the only other one that I use and I'm going to talk about today is the text tool. This is one of Pixlr's biggest downfalls, is there's not a whole lot of good fonts. Not a great selection of fonts. And so far, there doesn't appear to be any way to add more fonts. So that's something we're all hoping for. The ability to add fonts to Pixlr would be amazing. It might not even matter soon because Photoshop is coming to Chromebooks. So that may render Pixlr completely irrelevant. I'm guessing you'll still have to pay for Photoshop though, so there'll still be a spot in the market for Pixlr since Pixlr is free. But when Photoshop hits Chromebooks, I imagine a lot of people will stop using Pixlr. So, but adding text is simple. Click somewhere, type in some text. You can pick the color of the text here. Size can get pretty big. You have style, bold, italic, and all your different font options here. And you notice over here when you add text, it creates a completely separate layer. So you don't have to create a new layer for text. It will automatically create one for you. Nothing else does that. If I add a shape, it doesn't create a new layer. It just adds it right there on the current layer. But text does create a new layer, which is nice because what I can do is I can click on the text tool again, click on the text layer, and I can actually edit this text. So it's not like that text is set in stone. I can always go back and edit it, and it's its own layer, so I can move it around wherever I want to. So that's kind of an overview of all the, not all, but the buttons that I use. There's some other fun little buttons down here. This can kind of scrunch stuff in. This kind of expands it out. So you can do some weird stuff with those. I've never used it before, so. But yeah, I'll go over a few sort of best practices. I am not a graphic designer by trade. That is for sure a fact. But I have been using Photoshop and Pixlr for a long time, so there's a few things that I've learned along the ways. First thing I want to talk about is layers. Layers are very important. If you are making an image here and you make some lines, who knows what you're doing, right? You're just doing stuff. You have this box here, and then you put a circle here, and you're like, oh man, I wanted this circle to be the bottom right corner, not the top left. What do? Well, at this point, there's not much you can do besides maybe start over. You could try to get rid of this. Try to get rid of this circle that you put in here, but that's not going to work out so great. You're going to put a lot of time into trying to just remove this rogue circle that you didn't want. You could go back in your history, but maybe it's too late. Maybe you added that circle, you did a bunch of other stuff, and then you're like, you know, it would look better if that circle was in the bottom right corner. And you go back to your history, and maybe you've already gone too far, and you can't go back and do that. Plus, you don't want to, because that's all the work you've done between putting that circle there, and now you'd have to redo that, even if you could go back in the history. So it's very important that you create layers for any major additions. So first you create the box. That's great. Now I'm going to create a new layer over here by hitting this new layer button. And then I'm going to add my big circle. And then maybe I'm going to add some text. I can learn how to type. Okay, now I'm doing stuff, got a whole bunch of other things that I've done here, and I realize, oh, I really wish this circle was in the bottom right. Easy. Come over here, click on the layer, click your move tool, ta-da, now it's down there. Click on your text, ta-da. So it's very important to use layers. And you can even label the layers. Double click on it. This is my circle. So very important. If every major addition you put in your image, you want to give it a new layer. That way you can always go back and you can click this checkbox to make it disappear temporarily so you can see how things look without that layer, and bring it back, hide this one, bring it back. So very important to use layers. And when you save your image, always save it as a PXD. That is the same as a, I think Photoshop calls it a PSD. I forget what the extension is, but it's basically the same thing. You save it as a PXD, and then you can open it later, and it will look just like this with all the layers and everything. If you just save it as a JPEG, let's call it Pixlr.jpg. Oh, I already have one called that? Weird. There we go. If you just save it as a JPEG and you open it later, you'll notice my layers are gone because it just put it all into one layer. So I can't go in and take the circle and move it around anymore if I need to edit it later. So you can save it as a JPEG or a whatever file extension you want to save it as, a PNG, JPEG, whatever, but just make sure you also save a copy as a PXD. That way you can easily come back in later and edit things if you need to. Okay. And then that's really all I have for right now. I think I will go over some more options that I kind of forgot to go over earlier. Some basic stuff. Image size and canvas size. The difference between that, image size, if I change the image size to 250, you'll notice it shrinks my image down. If I change the canvas size, it does not actually change the way the image looks. It just gives me a bigger canvas. See, the image is still the same size, but I have a much wider canvas now. And one thing that you can do is you can select where the image that exists right now, where will it kind of hang out in the new canvas. I usually want it to hang out right in the middle. I want to give myself more area to work, and I want the image to stay in the middle. Boom. So now I have this bigger canvas, and my image is hanging out in the middle. Now, sometimes I don't always want it to hang out in the middle. Maybe I have this image here and I want to add some stuff to the right of it. I'll change the canvas size, I'll make it a little bit wider, and I'll tell it to hang out on the left side. So boom, now I have more space over here to add stuff to the image. So that's a handy tool. You can rotate stuff, you can flip it vertically, flip it horizontally. Layer, don't use this a whole lot, but I will sometimes come into layer styles. Here you can do stuff like give it shadows. Let me select a different layer. I'm going to go ahead and combine these two layers, merge down. Give the layer drop shadow, kind of inner shadow, outer glow, inner glow, and bevel. And each time you do one, you have a bunch of options over here. So if you want to give it inner shadow, let's not do that. That's not showing up very well. Let's do outer glow. It shows up. Give it a color. Let's give it a red color. Now there's kind of a reddish glow around it. Give it a bigger size. So lots of cool different things you can do with the layer styles. Now it's got kind of a red outer glow and a blue inner glow going on here. So I do use that from time to time just to give the image a little depth, or just make it a little more interesting. And under adjustments, I use this from time to time. Not a whole lot you can do here, but you can do stuff to desaturate. Let's show some color here. Fill shape, blue. I said fill shape, blue. There we go. So now we have some color. If I go to desaturate, it takes all the color away. So I use that for these images. When you hover over, all the color goes away. That's how I made those. I had the normal image, and then I desaturated it to get that image. So really quick and easy tool there. And there's just some other little effects like sepia, invert, that kind of stuff. Filter has some really cool things in here that you can do to an image. I'm not going to go over all of them. I don't know just by looking at them what they do. Sometimes I just play around and I pick one and see what it does. This seems to give us some vertical lines. So water swirl kind of messes it around a little bit. So there's a lot of different things you can do in here, and just play around with them. They're more fun to play around with on an actual photo than just some colored shapes. And I think that's about it. If you accidentally close any of your windows over here, Navigator, Layers, History, come up to View. So if I get rid of History, I can bring it back. I actually did that earlier, you may have noticed. So that's about it for all the basic buttons and everything. I'm going to probably do more videos to show you how to actually do specific things. This was just sort of a what do all the buttons do type thing. So if you have any requests how to do something, let me know and I will show you if I know how to do it. If I don't, I will try to learn and show you. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and you guys have a good one.